So what do you think would be the best case scenario that the province make changes to? What if you had to pull that card out and say, okay, this is what I would do, what would you say would be the best scenario for Milton?
Well, we just dealt with it on Wednesday at the regional council. We unanimously voted to requesting the province just to abolish all the local, LPAT stands for Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, and OMB is the Ontario Municipal Board, which has been around for almost 100 years. And everyone agreed it doesn't make any sense. And as we just spoke earlier, no other province has this. Vancouver, with all their planning challenges, Montreal, all the other urban areas, they don't have an appeal. Right. We can, we should be in the same. We should be looked at as a mature order of government. And if you got an appeal, if you got some problem with the law, you go to the courts.
Right.
But it should be, so you don't have appeals from the federal government or the provincial government, but you have appeals from what municipal government, and it's totally unfair. We have planning. I can understand when, like 1918, when they started the OMB, that nobody had planning departments. They didn't have educated people understanding all the implications. Now we have planning department with 33 people at the town and over 50 people at the region. Say, okay, we're following provincial policies. This is what our decision is based on our criteria, based on our local plans, and each community is slightly different. You don't want to have every community looking the same.
Right.
And just to add to what Colin said, since you brought Vancouver, since you mentioned Vancouver and Montreal, Ontario cannot have Victoria, BC, or Quebec City, or Montreal, Vancouver, because we're not allowed to create distinct culture, a distinct feel to it. In Ontario, because of OMB, every municipality basically will eventually look distinguishable from another. Whether you go to Markham or come to Milton or go to Oakville, they all look identical because of OMB.
Right, and that's a shame, really, when they
That's
do that, because there's no character. Yeah, you're right. That's what you want to avoid. Just out of curiosity, I'm just putting the devil's advocate on. So let's go with how you said you didn't vote in favor of this new development. Yeah. So what do you think would have happened if everybody said no? I'm more or less curious. Like, let's say everybody said today, you know what? They don't know what they're doing. We're going to say no. What happens from there?
Well, both not this one that we just dealt with, the corner of Derry and Ontario Street, and the one at 130 Thompson Road behind the Superstore. Both Councillor and Challoner and myself made motions to defer, similar to what Councillor Hamid did at the corner of Derry and Bronte, which was done, I believe it was May 4th, came back in June. There was compromises made, and that's basically what my advocate. I wasn't there to turn it down. I was to redesign it. And as I pointed out with the ones by the Superstore, 31, 29, and 27, it's almost triple the height that the official plan and the intensification report.
Right.
If anyone's interested, this was passed in 2010. It's almost 100 pages with Mayor and I approved, and the rest of the council at the time basically highlighted, okay, we have densification around the GO station. Everybody agreed with it. But when you come in at 3 times official plan height, staff are stretching themselves. And I worked it out with some assistance from staff. You could have done the same thing, same site with 17 stories, and have a similar style building, have all the features there. So my concern was highlighted actually on page 30 of the report. Is Milton's unique. We have the Niagara Escarpment.
We do.
And if you look at anywhere from Halifax to Vancouver and Victoria, as well as Montreal and Quebec City, part of their plans are to preserve the views of significant features like Mont Royal in Montreal and the Citadel in Halifax.
Right.
We can do that here and still allow some variations. And that's one of the plans that I would mention, which didn't get passed to council, is to have a sloping grade, low at Tremaine Road and high at Trafalgar Road. So if you want to have real high rises, put them on Trafalgar Road. We're actually looking at the regionally, in future, an LRT line.
Right. Yeah.
That's basically connect the Oakville, the future Milton, Trafalgar GO station, and the Georgetown one. Because, people, you tell them this, that, 40 years' time, Trafalgar Road is going to be like here, Ontario. People think you're nuts, but just like look at here, Ontario. 40 years ago, it looked like Trafalgar.
Right. Now, is that something that would be done more at the regional level, or is that something that has to start here in Milton and then trickle
It's a
out?
combination.
It's a combination.
We're starting at the local level with Egerton secondary plan, Trafalgar secondary plan, the regions in support, and we'll have to partner with province and Metrolinx as well, because we can't do this if we don't get a GO station.
That's
at
right.
Trafalgar, for example.
Yeah, and that's the other issue we're raising with cabinet ministers. And for anyone wondering, AMO stands for Association of Municipalities of Ontario. It's all 444 municipalities except Toronto. Right. And what we're pushing for is basically saying, province, you tell us to grow. Where's the money to do it?
I've always wondered that. Yeah. I just can't believe that they tell you what numbers you've got to hit, and they don't tell you how to get there. They just go, you have to be at this place at this time. have a nice day. And the builders know it. The builders know that we're part of the Places to Grow Act. So they bring that up at every council meeting. Well, you're told to, put all this stuff in. You got to have X number of units by this date, and they know it. So, at that point, you're kind of flogging a dead horse because you're like, well, you're right. Dad says, right? And you're asking Dad all the time, can we say no to this? And they're going, no, you can't.
Yeah, in that context, actually, I'm okay with provincial government and provincial legislation that's accountable, that has to run an election, setting up rules that municipalities have to follow. The issue here is LPAT and OMB, where they're not elected. They don't look at our official plan. We already have an official plan that complies with all provincial and federal legislation.
Right.
So we're already meeting all requirements. My issue is when OMB looks at specific projects in isolation, not as part of the whole plan, but in isolation, and says, well, we're going to allow it. Not talking to anybody else in the local community, not visiting local community, not looking at challenges in local community, just making a decision willy-nilly. That's the issue.
Absolutely. So now, I know you voted in favor of. What was your stand on it?
Look, here's the deal. If you look at Halton municipalities, in the last 3 years, we've spent over $5 million fighting at OMB with not much to show for. So when your own staff is in support of a development application, it's pretty much guaranteed to go through OMB. And that's when the question is, what can we get out of it? And I would have actually supported a deferral application, but a deferral motion, when I was chairing it, it didn't pass. Now, I would not have supported a deferral motion for the GO station one, because that's a different issue.
Right.
But the one in Ontario and Derry, I would be okay with deferring it for a month or so, see if we can work something out, but that didn't pass. Once it didn't pass, voting it down just meant you would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at least. And in this case, because our own staff was in support, because it met all the requirements, that meant our own staff would be used to argue against the council. Our staff report would be used as an evidence against the council's decision, and that had no chance of passing at all. And I was not in favor of spending that kind of money just to get a political win. I'm not saying that those who voted for it were looking for political win. I'm not accusing them of that. But for myself, I would have gotten a political win out of it. I would go and tell the public, look, I didn't support it, but it was going to pass anyway. I'd rather save money.
I got you. And you know what? I think you're doing it right now. I think the right thing to do, and I have it in here in front of me, like Colin brought up, town council passed a review to go up the ladder saying, we really need to review this Places to Grow Act.
Unanimously.
Unanimously. And I get that, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's the right thing to do, because unless we start changing how things happen, like LPAT and OMB, I think we're going to have this continuously going on. I think it's going to get way worse.
Look, I think Colin would agree, we need to make this an election issue. Unless it's an election issue at the provincial election, it doesn't matter which party wins the election. They talk the talk, they won't walk the walk. Even with LPAT and the previous party, they were in power for 15 years. They didn't do it until just before the election. And who knows if it would have stuck. We need to educate the public and actually make an election issue when public demands it. Without it, nothing's going to change.
Couldn't agree more. And I think people have to really wake up and go, a lot of these things do happen at a higher level, and we have to give our people the tools to get that done.
That's exactly
so it. Are you worried about any other applications that are coming up? I know that there's a bunch of them.
Half a dozen.
We've got even more serious concerns. We've got one on Brawny Street, which we have the Save Old Milton group, which is now called Save Milton. It's a 21-story building right beside two-story, 100-year-old buildings, which is a concern. And basically, under our guidelines that we just passed last year, basically we have a 45-degree angle from any existing residential, which the other properties met. This one doesn't. So it's going to be a concern there, because under the plan, the most that staff could recommend is 6 to 8 stories. The developer says, I need 21 stories to make it work. So there's where we have an issue there. And also regarding one of the other concerns that I raised and Councillor Challoner raised, that I will pose to these applications, is their development charges. Every apartment that gets built, and we got 5,000 in the mill right now, is $540 less to the municipality because of the exemptions. So we're not only are we putting something that a lot of people don't want, we're also, the existing taxpayers are paying for that, which is ridiculous.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great point. I think people don't understand also the order in which infrastructure happens as a law. I mean, I couldn't believe, like, during the elections that someone actually, I think we all looked at each other like, I wish we thought of that. Someone said, well, just give them the land. Remember that? Give them land. It's like, we don't own any land.
Yeah,
I don't know where you think, the municipality owns land. We own none of it.
Yeah.
It's all owned privately. They all have the right to develop on it if it's in a developmental area.
Yeah.
They just have to follow the laws and the rules. And the same thing goes for infrastructure. People go, oh, we shouldn't build a thing unless that infrastructure is there. I understand we need infrastructure, but what they have to understand is the infrastructure is built by the developer for what they're building.
Yeah.
And so it's cart before horse. I would love to be able to legally say to somebody, you have to build the infrastructure first, then you're allowed to build your building, but that's not the law.
Yeah.
That's not.